live. So, weekly shred, Thursday night. I am your host, Jim Schultz. Thank you guys for spending your Thursday nights with me. I am so humbled by your attention. I am so humbled by your time investment, just everything, man. You guys are really amazing. As you guys chime in, for those of you watching on the replay, hey, toss me a little replay comment down below, whether it's on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, wherever you happen to be checking this out. And so, here's what we're going to cover tonight. So why are you always hungry while dieting? And I say you as the universal you, not just you personally. I mean you like everyone. Like me, like you, like your neighbor, like your friend, like your coworker, like everybody is, right? And not only that, but it gets worse. Why do we remain hungry, right, even after the diet is over? And so this is what I want to unpack tonight. And so at some level, right, we've just got to embrace the fact that, hey, it's going to happen. And, obviously we're going to talk about that. Anyone who's ever dieted seriously knows there's going to be some periods of hunger. There's going to be some periods where you're just a little bit hungry. There's going to be other periods where you might be a lot a bit hungry, right? And then, the different levels of in between. And also periods where you're actually full, believe it or not. But anyone who's ever done this kind of knows, that this is the case. But what's crazy is even after you hit your target, right, this is still the case. Even after you hit your target weight, oftentimes you can still feel hungry. There's actually a reason why, at least one reason why. I'm not going to pretend that I had the only reason why necessarily, but there's more to the story than just, hey, I'm eating fewer calories, I'm hungry, and that must just be the way that it is. So let's get into it, man. And wherever you guys are watching this from, toss me a comment down below. I want to know if the F Cubed audience is still international. It was international at one point. I don't know that it still is, but nevertheless, Captain Obvious. Captain Obvious, restricting calories is going to lead to hunger. So this is like super obvious, right? This is like literally dieting 101. But I still just want to make sure that we understand the foundation tonight, right? I mean, if you've been following the shred, if you've been following any of my content, if you've tried to do this yourself, right? At one point or another, hey, in order for me to get lean, in order for me to achieve my fat loss objectives, I've got to be in a caloric deficit. There's just no way around that. It doesn't mean you have to track macros, although I would be strongly in favor of that. It doesn't mean that you have to, count calories, although I would be strongly in favor of that. But it doesn't change the fact that at a mathematical root level, you have to be in a caloric deficit. Well, think about it, right? If I'm in a caloric deficit, then I'm going to be hungry. Why am I going to be hungry? Because what am I asking my body to do? I'm asking my body to get by on less energy than it's used to, right? That is like literally the definition of a caloric deficit. And so I'm in a caloric deficit. I'm asking my body, I'm asking my system to get by on less energy. And so really, if you think about it, it's just the cost of doing business, right? At some level, there are things that we can do to mitigate the hunger. There are things that we can do to decrease the hunger. And maybe that should be one of the weekly shreds, right? My own unique proprietary strategies that you can easily find for free on the internet that I use when I'm dieting really hard or I'm in a competition prep or whatever and I'm trying to maximize fat loss. Like, what do I do to minimize hunger? I don't want to talk about that tonight because we'll go down that rabbit hole. We'll never come back. But maybe sometime in the future we can bring that up. But whether you do those things or not, right, you just got to embrace it. You just got to take it head on. You just got to say, you know what? Like, I'm going to be hungry. And that's okay. I am willing to absorb that cost. I'm not talking about being, like, starving, right? I'm not talking about being, like, so hungry you can't think straight. But, having a modest level of hunger most of the time, yeah, that's what we're talking about. And we are talking about some periods of time where you are going to be really hungry, right? This is kind of a cost of doing business. But, quick little side note. Here's a quick little, and this may only apply to me. I don't know if this applies to you or not. Let me know. I would love to know. I actually find that once I get through the first few days, right? Like, you start a new diet or a new shred season or whatever. The first couple of days, first week or two, it's a little sticky, right? Because you're not really used to being hungry and you just have to kind of get used to it. But then after a while, once you kind of settle in, whatever that is for a lot of people, for me, it's usually about 2-3 weeks in. I find that I am very, very high energy on a modest level of hunger. Very high energy. I'm not sluggish. I'm not fatigued yet. That stuff all comes later, right? But generally speaking, when I'm just carrying a little bit of hunger, like I just kind of always feel ready to go. Like I just kind of like I'm always ready, right? Like I'm always ready. Like if I'm outside, like gardening, and I'm planting my tomatoes for the season, and then all of a sudden the tides turn, and I've got to get ready for a heavy triple with 90% of my 1 rep max. Like I'll be ready in 10 minutes. Like I'll be ready in no time. Just give me my squat shoes, a couple warm up sets, and I'm ready to go. Right? That's just how I personally feel. I'm just a little bit of hunger, right? Because you guys know when you're always full and you're always like satiated, that kind of has a downside. Obviously, it's awesome for all the obvious reasons, but it kind of has a downside in that you feel kind of sluggish, right? Like you feel kind of lethargic because you're just not necessarily. I'm not talking about just like pizza and sweet and sour chicken like super centered together necessarily. I'm just talking about being really, really full all the time, right? It kind of, sometimes it can weigh you down a little bit. So I don't know, maybe that's just me. I'd love to know if I'm not alone out there. That would be really, really cool. But either way, there is more to the story, right? There is more to the story, and what it boils down to tonight is your hormones. So that's what we're going to focus on tonight. But what I want to do now, we're going to mix things up. I have the capabilities, and I'm very slowly but surely trying to improve the quality of these shreds as I get comfortable with the setup here. We have the capability to bring in these video clips, and so I want to go ahead and do that. So this is a clip from my man Layne Norton talking about the hormonal responses when he's dieted in the past and what natural bodybuilders typically experience. And so let's take a look at this because this is kind of the direction that we're gonna go in tonight. So let's go ahead, let's do that.
And if you look at their response to dieting, by the time that they're ready for stage, they're on all of them, all 5 or 4 or 5, their testosterone, they were hypogonadal. They were down out of the normal range. And I know for myself, when I competed, I had my testosterone assessed, and I was low testosterone by that measure. Now, being 7 years since I ever did a show, I'm actually like right at the upper end of the high normal. So it's not like I was somebody who was like kind of low or middling testosterone to begin with. I actually run like a very high natural testosterone level, but just dieting down for 24 weeks, getting stage lean, mine was out of the normal range. And then you have things like, just anything, a lot of it's energy metabolism. Cortisol tends to go up. You even tend to get hormones that are kind of responsible for sleep regulation. You get kind of dysregulated sleep. You'll wake up a lot, or the sleep won't be as restful. Your body doesn't really like you to be very, very lean, and so it kind of responds in a way that would make you not want to be very, very lean, right, which is making you uncomfortable. So anybody that's dieted down.
So there you go. So I was listening in with you guys, so I knew when to cut it off. So that's pretty interesting, right? I mean, that's my man Layne Norton, right? And I bring him up on the show, on the shred all the time. He's in my content all the time. Just a great guy and super knowledgeable in the space, right? I look up to him in a lot of ways. Well, he was just talking about how, when we're dieting down, and he was talking about natural bodybuilders, but you don't have to be a competitive bodybuilder to benefit from this tonight. If you are, then this will definitely benefit you. But anyone who is a serious physique athlete, whether it's, officially, competitively, or just recreationally, either way, you're going to experience this, right? You're going to experience these hormonal changes as you get super lean. And so that's kind of the direction that I want to go in tonight, because there's a reason over and above just the caloric deficit why you feel so hungry when you're dieting. So let's kind of take a look at that. So, all right. So we talked about Captain Obvious. So now here's what we're going to do. We got a little diagram ready to go for you guys. And I tried to animate this, but I was not skilled enough to do it. And I was like, yeah, if I try to animate this, it's going to be a train wreck tonight. So hopefully in the future, I will have the animation skills ready to go for you guys. But anyway, so let's start with your brain. So your brain is kind of, it's obviously the master control center of your whole body, right? Like it basically, controls how you feel. It controls, what you do. I mean, it basically controls everything, right? It is literally master control Okay. Well, if you look on the bottom there, you have, two little leptin. It looks like two little leptin circles. Well, for our purposes tonight, those are your fat cells. Okay? Let's start with the one on the bottom left there. That is a situation where you are not dieting, where your fat cells, they're nice and plump, they're nice and juicy, right? Your fat cells happy. You're just fat, you're happy, you are ready to go. Well, leptin is a hormone in your body that is released by your fat cells. And it sends a signal to your brain that helps you control whether or not you feel full and satiated. So when your fat cells are able to release a lot of leptin into your bloodstream and your brain kind of picks up on that signal, your brain tells, the rest of you that you are full, that you are satiated. So when your fat cells are kind of a normal size, right, you're going to have plenty of leptin to release and you're going to feel full, you're going to feel satiated. Now contrast this with that little teeny weeny guy on the right hand side. That little guy, that's your fat cells when you're dieting. That's your fat cells when you're getting peeled out of your mind, right? You can't eliminate fat cells, right? This is something that I learned just a few years ago. I actually didn't know this. But you can't eliminate fat cells. You can only shrink them. They will always be there, but you can basically shrink them down to microscopic size. But once your fat cells begin to shrink, which is going to happen, that's what you're trying to do, right? That's literally the objective of what you're trying to accomplish. Once your fat cells start to shrink, what happens? They're getting smaller. They can't hold as much leptin. So, when you eat or when the leptin is released from your fat cells, it can't send as strong, as potent a signal to your brain to tell you that you are full, to tell you that you are satiated. So, honestly, guys, this is a big reason why. Tell me if you've ever felt this before. I feel this all the time. Whenever I'm dieting, especially in competition prep, I feel this every single time. Like I'm going through a little cleanup phase right now, and I'm starting to feel it only a little bit. It's probably going to come more so down the line a little bit. You eat a meal, a pretty good meal, a pretty hefty meal, but within 30, 45 minutes, you're legitimately hungry again. You are legitimately feeling hungry again. You're like, what is wrong with me? Why am I still hungry? Like, this is crazy. I just ate a bunch of chicken and a bunch of oatmeal together, obviously. Right? You're like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand. Partly what's going on is what we're talking about here tonight, right? Because your fat cells have shrunk, now all of a sudden they can't release the level of leptin that you were accustomed to when you carried more body fat. So in a way, you just never quite feel full, right? In a way, you just never quite feel satiated. Now, one way to combat this is by having, a refeed day or a really high carb meal or a couple of meals or a couple of days, however you want to structure, right? With kind of within your nutritional strategy, if you're carb cycling, or whatever. We talked about the execution of carb cycling last week. I thought that was a pretty good segment. But either way, at various points in your diet, you're going to have carbohydrate-rich meals, right? You should. When you do, the influx of the carbohydrates can All right, so we're back, right? So we lost the audio there for a second because I'm getting all excited about this and I'm knocking chords out. But anyway, we're back. So if I didn't lose too many people, the 3 people that check me out live Thursday nights, I hope you guys are still hanging with me. But either way, so what are one of the ways that you can combat this? you can have a carbohydrate-rich meal. That will send your leptin levels higher temporarily, which can help you feel satiated. But it's not going to change the fact that your fat cells may have shrunk. It's not going to change the fact that, you don't have as much leptin to release from those fat cells. Okay, so this is one hormone that is working against you. It's not the only one, right? If we kind of dig a little deeper into the story here, what we see is we also have this other hormone called ghrelin. You may have heard of ghrelin before. If you haven't heard of ghrelin before, it's basically, obviously everyone has heard of the phrase, hey, my stomach is growling, right? You may be experiencing that right now, actually. That kind of comes from this ghrelin hormone. So ghrelin is a hormone that's secreted by your stomach, your small intestines, I believe. Right? I'm certainly not an expert in hormones. I don't even pretend to be, but I have picked up some things along the way that I think can be useful for you guys. And so that's kind of what I'm sharing with you all tonight and at various points, throughout the life of the shred. But if we start with our brain again, this is the master control center, right? So what kind of signals am I sending to my brain? Well, again, let's say that on the left-hand side, that gray oval is your stomach. Your stomach is going to send a certain amount of ghrelin. It's not going to send the ghrelin, but there's going to be a certain amount of ghrelin being produced by your stomach, which is going to send a signal to your brain, which is going to control your appetite, right? Like when you send a ton of ghrelin to your brain, it's telling your brain that you're hungry. It's telling your brain that you need to eat. It's telling your brain, stop what you are doing and find Skittles now, right? That's basically ghrelin. Well, on the right-hand side, that's also your stomach. But this time, let's say that you are dieting. So on the left-hand side, you're not dieting. It's kind of a normal situation. On the right-hand side, you are dieting, right? Stomach is still the same size. Believe it or not, you cannot shrink your stomach. I thought that for the first 9 years of my bodybuilding career. I'm embarrassed to admit, but it's true. You can't shrink your stomach. But what happens is because you are in this caloric deficit, right? Because you are consistently underfeeding your body, obviously intentionally, your stomach is going to be sending more hunger signals to your brain. There's going to be more ghrelin that is produced. So now, let's go ahead and let's think through this, right? Let's put these things together. Let's give you guys the 1-2 combo value pack. Here it is. When you're not dieting, what happens? The two hormones inside of your body that are largely determining your hunger, fullness, and satiation. You have leptin, you have ghrelin. Your fat cells, again, they're nice and juicy, they're nice and plump, right? They're going to send plenty of leptin to your brain telling you that you are full. Your stomach is going to produce a normal amount of ghrelin and you are going to be perfectly fine. You're going to be satiated, you're going to be ready to go, you're not really going to have anything to worry about. But what happens when you start dieting? What happens when all of a sudden, right, you want to mess everything up and get yourself to Shredsville? Now all of a sudden, the fat cells shrink, so the leptin levels drop. And when you get near the end, right, when you get near the very end of whatever you're going for, if it's a pretty lean look, if it's a pretty lean physique, like you are going to feel this. You're going to always feel you're going to feel kind of hollow, honestly, where you just never really feel full. You just never really feel satiated. And then also now you have more ghrelin coming out of your stomach, right? You have more ghrelin being produced by your stomach. So you put those two things together, and what do you have? You have a really difficult situation that you're going to have to manage, right? Now, I've got an action item for you guys here in just a second, but before we get into that, let me just kind of let the cat out of the bag right now. There is really no way around this. Right, there's a couple things we can do, and I'm gonna suggest that here in a second. But I don't want to kid you guys. I don't want to pretend that I've got this panacea, this potion that's just gonna make all this go away. No. You need to be aware that this is what you've signed up for. You need to be aware that as you are getting to Shredsville, as you're kind of scouting out homes in the area, do you want to buy? Do you want to rent? Do you need a backyard? You got to figure all these things out. As you're trying to get there, it's okay. I need to be aware that there's going to be some hunger here. And let me embrace that at some level. Yes, you can use Walden Farms. Yes, you can use Splenda. you should use Splenda. If you don't use Splenda, then I don't know that we can be friends. But either way, you've just got to be aware that this is going to come with the territory. It just is. And at the hormonal, mitochondrial, cellular level, like this is what's happening, right? And so we just need to be aware that these things are happening on the inside. And so, all right, so let me give you guys an action item and we'll get you guys out the door tonight. I appreciate you guys hanging with me as I fix the audio there kind of midway through. But here's the action item. So it's partly the cost of doing business, hunger, man. But you can allow your body to adjust if you give it time. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean a couple of things. So the first thing, you got to go slowly on the way down. You guys have heard me say this so many times. You've got to go slowly on the way down, right? Because if you don't, you're going to have all kinds of hormonal changes, you know, that we didn't even talk about tonight with testosterone and cortisol and some of the things that Layne was kind of talking about there in that clip that we showed, you know. So we need to be aware of that. We got to go slow. But, you can't dawdle. You can't miss too many weeks. You can't mess around, right? And you're going to miss some weeks. You're going to stall. That's the part of the natural process of getting leaner. But if you really try to shortcut the process, if you really try to short circuit the whole thing, and you try to find, these ways around the hunger, and you're cheating a little bit here, you're doing this there, and you're just kind of dawdling, right? You're just kind of blowing through the wind, and you're really losing ground. You're really not capitalizing on that time. I think what happens is not only do you make the process longer, but you allow these hormones an opportunity to work against you for a longer period of time, because they will do that. And the longer you are in this state of chronically, calorically deprived, right, the worse off you're going to feel and the worse off it's going to be. The other side of that is when you're done, when you reach your target, and this might be the most important part of the last 21 minutes, and that's why I saved it for the end. This is my big crescendo, and I even have audio, which is pretty good. When you hit your target, give yourself some time. Give yourself some time to get back to a normal amount of calories. Now, this is not going to be easy. You are going to want to eat everything. Everything. I've done this. I've wanted to do this, and I have executed this plan with perfection many, many times. You are going to want to do this. And not only that, but you have to be aware your fat cells have shrunk down to their lowest level in your entire life, possibly. You are going to feel hungry. It's not going to matter how much you eat at some level. You're still going to feel hungry. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're an outlier. It doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I can't control myself. It just means that your hormones need an opportunity to adjust to the new, leaner you. Now, you are going to regain some body fat. You should regain some body fat. You guys have heard me say this before. I'll say it again because I can't resist. Nobody, and I mean nobody, stays at their lightest and their leanest all the time. Nobody does that. But what we want to do is get down to a new level of leanness, get down to a new level of lightness, so that we can reset our body's settling point or set point or whatever you want to call it, right? We can change our lives by going from 240 down to 200 and then bounce up to 210 or 212 and live there and let our hormones stabilize there, because that can absolutely happen if you give your body time to adjust. Because guys, don't forget, man, what does your body want to do? It wants to find equilibrium. What does your body want to do? It wants to find homeostasis. And so if you give it time, it will adjust. It will absolutely adjust. And then the leptin and the ghrelin will all stabilize. And believe it or not, you actually don't have to be hungry all the time, always, and forever. You just got to do it for a little while until you get into Shredsville and you finally buy some property, and then you are all set. So, I don't know, man. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I really do. If you guys have any questions, hopefully at some point in the future, I'll be able to weave questions in live. I can do it. I have the capabilities to do it. But I just have a feeling I'll just get totally discombobulated and start losing audio and start losing video and all that kind of stuff. So we're slowly weaving things in, right? And so, but if you guys have any questions, just let me know. You can drop them in, wherever you happen to be watching this, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, whatever makes the most sense to you, makes the most sense to me. You can email me. I'm just jschultzf3@gmail. You can hit me up on social media. I'm just Jay Schultz F3 across the board. If you guys want to mosey on down into the description and scoop up the fat loss formula, it's totally free. It would, kind of help you get on the pathway to Shredsville and kind of give you a nice little foundation to work from. So I would give that a look. That's free. There's a cardio plan that's also totally free. And then there's, of course, Full Throttle Fat Loss, which is not free. It is a ton of money. So you can check that out too and just buy my stuff. So, yeah, so that's it. So that's the show tonight. I don't know. I had fun. I hope you guys had fun. And we'll see you guys next week.